last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
Well, howdy, gang. It's, golly, a little past the first week of March. Who would have believed it? We've had some increasingly nice weather out here in sunny Southern California. And we got another brand new edition of DMR on right now. My guest tonight is host of iDetective and the Mutual UFO State Director for the state of New York, Mr. Chris Deperno. Always a welcome guest here at DMR. And of course, as usual, he showed up. My God, he showed up. Gerry Kissel. And I don't know if Mark Center made it here yet or not. But let's get them all on screen and see who the hell's here. Oh, there's Mark.
Marky.
I said it. I'll bet he was taking a nap.
Well, it was daylight savings time got him.
It was actually both. I was taking a nap and I set my clock a couple minutes to slow. I don't know, but I was a minute late.
Did I win a cookie? Yeah, that's it.
Yes, you did. A THC cookie from California.
Yeah.
It makes you feel groovy.
Yes, it does.
Well, we've had a lot of stuff going on in the news. It looks like the president made good on his threat, although I think he got blocked by a federal judge in expelling some anti-Semitic Hamas supporters back in New York, which I got to tell you, I'm kind of sad to see that stopped or blocked. But Gene Hackman, my God, one of the greats from the acting community, and his wife passed away, had been found for dead in their house for days and days. We're gonna touch on that a little bit. And Chris has been banging around in the abduction phenomena research, and I got some questions for him on that tonight. So, gang, where do you want to start? Gerry, I know you were anxious to address the the Gene Hackman thing. You want to lead it off?
Well, we've been talking a lot about it on our shows over on Pop Culture Minefield, and I've been paying a lot of attention to it. And I think the most disturbing aspect of it was, not so much there. I mean, because that's disturbing enough that they were found dead in their homes. First thing that went to my mind was, of course, gas. And I worked in emergency medical services for years, as well as in medical. And I couldn't believe, that they said there was no signs of that. And I'm like, well, what on earth happened? And the mystery deepened, like Sherlock Holmes level, when they said that one of their 3 dogs was found dead in a closet. And I'm like, okay, now that's the most disturbing part of this mystery. It's like, what is going on with that? And finally, everything's been unraveling. The New Mexico State Medical Examiner released his initial findings, which stated that he believes that she died on or right about at the 11th of February. She had, what's that disease called?
Hantavirus.
Yeah, that's it, hantavirus, which is from mouse and rat poop. They carry parasites and shit. And it's not passable between humans, but, that's how you get it, is exposure to their pee or their droppings. So she was under treatment for that. And apparently she had an episode, and which is why her pills were spilled out on the counter in the bathroom. And she apparently knocked a space heater down off the counter, and she was found on the floor. Both of them were found in the beginning stages of mummification in their hands and feet. That's where it starts. And people are like, well, it's not hot enough. It's like, it doesn't require heat. It requires arid air, which they have there in that part of New Mexico. It's very arid. But again, is the dog. But once we found out that his last episode of being alive was on the 17th, and that was the reading that they got from his pacemaker. And the minute the heart stops, the pacemaker stops working, and it starts sending signals. And so that was the last one. So it's believed he had fallen. He had wandered around the house, probably not even aware, because he suffered from Alzheimer's, and he was in the second to third stage. And he was probably very confused by her being dead. Probably not even sure. He probably thought she was just sleeping. And the dog was, of course, upset. And so the likelihood is, and this is the consensus, that he put the dog in the closet. And the dog's isolated from water, has about 3 days before it will begin to die. And I'm sure you've run into that, Chris and Don, in law enforcement. Dogs and cats, they have to have water. They've usually got between 48 and 72 hours before they begin to die. The liver, everything begins to fail. And so it's believed that that's why he died. He was isolated in the closet. The other two dogs were left wandering around, and so they were fine. And then, of course, Gene was found in the mudroom right outside the kitchen before going outside the house, wearing a robe over his sweatpants, T-shirt, and slippers. And he had his cane with him, and it was at his side when he collapsed to the floor and just died. There's no mention of any trauma. And they ruled out exposure to any of the gases, methane or carbon monoxide. So it just looks like a series of horrifying events took place in that house. And it's tragic. And then you've got that nut job. And I love him, Randy Quaid, out there, first day saying, he murdered. Can't trust law enforcement. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's the craziest part. It's like, look, I get it when you're talking about government officials and maybe even the DOJ and the FBI, but when it starts getting into regional law enforcement being corrupt and part of the cabal, it's just like, come on, dude. It's just too much there.
Well, and you have to remember his reasoning is that they would kill him to take the money he's making off of the movie. He was the
highest paid royalty actor alive at that time, all the way up to February 17th.
Right. But it's like, so they're going to kill him to take that money. Right. Who's going to kill him to take that money? Well, the Hollywood cabal. Are they the same people who put $350 million into piece of shit movies every month and can't even make a decent film?
Right.
And
they can't make a movie, but they can plot. Exactly.
Out of that whole thing, what kind of disturbs me or makes me wonder a little bit is that nobody went to visit him. So there was no healthcare workers.
Nobody, and they had a maintenance worker who would often not have contact with them, but they were at the house all the time. And they're the ones who actually discovered the dead bodies.
One of the things that, and I'm not sure they've ruled, or I should say, found out why the the maintenance worker said the doors were locked, but yet when the police arrived, the door was open. So it could be and that happens. It could be an honest mistake, or the door was not properly open the first time, thinking it was locked. But I mean, everything that I've heard about it, it's all just natural cause. But the only thing was, this is a superstar actor, and I mean, he's got money, all over the place. You would think that he'd have healthcare workers coming in. Somebody would have discovered
and 3 children.
Not one of them showed up. So I mean, what do you do?
Really, I don't know. To me, I'm not a superstar actor, except in my own brain, of course. But it doesn't really bother me because I talked to Don about that, and I said, if something like that happened to me and my wife, we don't have a dog, but if something happened like that to me and my wife, how long would it take? Well, I talk to Don almost every day. I don't talk to anybody else but my wife almost every day. I just don't. I live a pretty solitary life. If I'm not having the meetings in my backyard during the winter and stuff, I may not see people for freaking weeks. Other than, granted, I'm get out in my truck and I drive around and I come back. But at 95 and you have issues, you're probably not doing that, right? So if I wasn't doing that, it could be 2, 3, 4 weeks before anybody thinks about where's Mark.
Yeah, I've always said the same thing with my daughter because we're really close, my daughter and I. But she's got her own little balls of shit to roll. And when she's working and all this stuff going on, I have seen as much as 5 weeks go by between us. And I could be dead 5 weeks and she wouldn't know it, And she loves the shit out of me, and like staying in contact with me. But I know she's busy, and so
also, as sick as the wife might have been, maybe she was the primary caregiver, so they didn't really need people to come by that much.
And that's most likely what's going on here because she was the person who provided 90% of his care.
Yeah, much
There were
younger.
no home health care personnel that I'm even aware of.
How old was she?
She was 63.
Right. So then my wife's from the Philippines. They gravitate towards the nurse and things of that sort. So she helps to take, because I've had some issues. She takes care of me sort of in more so than just the female aspects, but the natural sort of a thing. She went to school to be a nurse, but she decided not to. Maybe that's the same sort of deal with the wife there. She was just that way, the caregiver, and they just didn't want to be bothered. It is weird, though, when you're that famous and worth that much money and all that, to not have, like, cameras, right? At least I got a Ring camera. So.
Now, I've seen 2 different reports where they kept saying there were not security cameras around the place. But then one of the law enforcement, when the sheriff's department made one of their announcements, said something about security cameras. And I'm like, were there or were there not?
Right.
So I don't know at this point. It's really
it's weird with the Ring camera because I forget about it, and like my wife's gone now for 2 weeks with on a trip with her sister, and she'll like text me and go, "Oh, I saw you went somewhere." Right? Because they just work.
She spies on you.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. So yeah, it's sad, it's sad that he's gone. Let's go around the room and pick his best movies. For me, I have not only The Unforgiven, but one that nobody mentions, The Quick and the Dead. I love
excellent movie.
We're going to be doing that in 2 weeks.
That was such a odd. I think it was directed by the guy who did the Dead films. I think.
Yeah, Sam Raimi.
Well, the first time I ever saw Gene Hackman was in, of all things, the Roy Thinnes series, The Invaders.
Well, that's because you're old, Don.
That's right. That's right.
Wait a minute. I'm not as old as him, and I saw that too.
I'm older than dirt. And then The French Connection.
Bonnie and Clyde was first, and followed by French Connection and Young Frankenstein. And we've been covering a lot of Gene Hackman films. We just did this last weekend, The Birdcage, because I thought that was a hilarious fucking movie.
A film that could not be made now.
Yeah, oddly, so with some of the language in it. I just thought it was brilliant. And what's amazing is the French play and film it's based on is nowhere near as funny. I've seen La Cage aux Folles.
Are you saying the French aren't funny?
I'm saying that film was not funny.
Are you saying that Jerry Lewis is not funny?
No, he is not funny. I love him, but no, he's not funny.
Well, I think his top film had to be the French Connection. That really brought me to stardom.
Yeah.
And he played Popeye Doyle so well. I had a chance to meet Popeye Doyle, the real Popeye Doyle's partner, and we actually talked a little bit about the film. And I mean, he was absolutely says that Hackman played Popeye Doyle pretty well.
Well, amazingly, the sequel is not really considered a sequel. It's the movie The 7-Ups, because that was Popeye Doyle's partner. That was the model for that character, The 7-Ups, which I love.
The 7-Ups.
But a film for me, my favorite film with him though is The Package with Tommy Lee Jones. I love that movie. It's a conspiracy theory film. That kind of touches
the woman
JFK.
that played his wife, and I'm trying to think of her name. She was superb in that.
I'm friends with her. It's Joanna Cassidy.
Joanna Cassidy.
I've known her for about 25 years. She's a great gal. She's still
gorgeous. I just figured something out about you, Kissel. You're a goddamn name dropper.
Yeah, you're fucking right I am. I'm like, what's the point of knowing famous people and not mention it? No, she is really a nice person, very down to earth. I did some artwork for her. And just great actress. And she was really kind of the foundation for that film to work, because it's her performance in the film that lends the gravity for what Gene Hackman's doing. And I love that film. And by the way, Chris, he's also a former Marine.
Yes, he is. He is very much. And I'll tell you, another great movie that I loved him in was Crimson Tide. With Denzel.
Very good film with Denzel. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. He did, he did stuff like Get Shorty, which, people loved.
We just did Get Shorty 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. How about Mississippi Burning?
That is a film that's tough, man. I've seen it one time and it really bummed me out watching it, but it's a great movie.
Yeah. Also, people don't realize that's also based on a true story.
True story. Yeah.
It's so here's the Gene Hackman. What a great actor he was, and all the films that he gave us.
And that's not urine, Mark. That's green tea.
Mm.
No, really, it's green tea. No.
Here we go.
Oh, Gatorade, cheater.
Actually, it's water.
Oh,
we have a contract with Sparkletts Water. Okay, so we get every month we get a number of bottles, 5-gallon bottles delivered.
Do you have well water there?
No, and hang on a minute. Bailey, get out of there.
He lives in the San Fernando area, San Fernando Valley. And I didn't know if you got water out there, city water.
Nice. I was keeping that top secret.
Oh, yeah, the FBI already knows.
You just told all my
all the people that hate you already know where you live, Don.
But anyway, so we got a water dispenser, right? And it's got a side for hot water and then one for cold water. Well, the hot water thing went out, so I called them up. And the guy came out this morning and delivered a new dispenser. So I'm happy as a pig rolling around in garbage about that. But, okay, being that as it may, as much as I love, I love Zero, okay?
It is the better Zero. One, in my opinion. I like that one a lot myself.
Yeah, but I keep the bottle and I keep it filled with my special home delivered water. So I'm happy about that. So anyway, okay, let's get back to some UFO stuff. Now, I've been doing this thing for a really long time now, decades. And the one aspect that I've never been comfortable with, even a little bit, has been with the subject of people claiming abduction experiences. Now, when my wife and I were publishing UFO magazine, we were getting calls or visits from people all the time that had been claiming that experience. And it just, I got to be honest, it freaked me out. I always felt that if I told them something that might adversely affect them, okay, I'd feel horrible about that. Now, as a result of that, I would, if I were asked for my advice, I would tell them several things. Number one, okay, you believe something happened to you. If you can get through it or past it, my suggestion would be to try to put it behind you. If not, okay, especially if you have any physical remnants from whatever this experience was, I would schedule a conference with my home physician, somebody that you trust, you could talk to. If it still is bothering you, I would recommend you suggest you seek a conference with a mental health official. Now, that's not to suggest anything is wrong with you, but it's something you're dealing with. The last thing I would ever do would be to go to a hypnotherapist.
Okay, now you're bringing up Betty and Barney Hill.
Mostly within the UFO. No. That was different. Betty and Barney was different. Okay. That was actually the first publicly known experience that happened. And the guy, the hypnotherapist, was a credentialed individual. I'm talking about, and out here in California, believe me, I've seen it all. People in the UFO field will want to make themselves, I don't know, more important than they actually are, would take some classes.
Yeah, they put themselves into the narration.
And ultimately, okay, and I've witnessed this in one where Vicki and I were invited to one hypnotherapy session. I actually heard the hypnotherapist ask the subject where the aliens were from. Now, anybody that knows anything about hypnotherapy, Chris, you as a police officer, I don't know if you ever had any cases where the department actually used a hypnotherapist to interview somebody. Did you ever undergo that?
Yeah, we used it on a case once, but you can't use the findings in a court of law.
Right.
It's same thing like a lie detector test. Hypnotherapy has not been.
It's not conclusively proved truth. Yeah.
And you can't use that. And so it's just an investigative tool, rarely used, because the problem with hypnotherapy, and Don, you know this, and I'm sure everybody knows this, it can be so subjective. If you don't give the question right, then you actually start putting thought memories into the person's head, where he'll start thinking, oh yeah, I mean,
you can lead them right down the path.
That's why I mentioned the hypnotherapy person, and it's somebody that was not real well known, but well known in the field, asked this subject where the aliens were from, leading the witness. Okay, that's basically what it boils down to. But yeah. What was it, Chris, that got you pulled into this?
Historical evidence that that made me kind of think and say, there's got to be something to it. Now, when I say historical evidence, I mean something that was presented and then time later was discovered to be true. So let's take Betty and Barney Hill's case. So there's been all this talk about that Betty had described a star system, and there was no star system at that time when she was interviewed.
Marjorie Fish star map, yeah.
Right. There wasn't anything. But years later, they discovered her drawing was accurate. What she was describing was an accurate star system. So, I mean, that's not hard. That, the chances of making that up and being accurate are probably
It's impossible.
Right. It's very hard. Then you have to take the Calvin Parker deal. Now, Calvin Parker and his friend were being tape recorded, and they didn't know it. Now, when you got, and we've seen this before, people secluded in a room, they start to talk and try to make a story. And then you can understand, well, wait a minute, there's a story that's being made. These guys were so scared, they were actually talking about the incident, and stuff. So that made another historical piece of evidence that was true. Then you got to look at, and this is not about abduction, but it makes the whole phenomenon kind of, fit into play. You got to look at Bob Lazar. A lot of people at the beginning thought Bob Lazar was a quack, but think about everything he's talked about. And years later, we're discovering, boy, he's accurate. He's actually describing how a ship would move. And sure enough, we got film of it, years and years later, doing that stuff. So I like to look at historical evidence when I look at abduction cases. And I want to see patterns. I want to see what this person says and that person says, that they don't know each other. One's completely on the other side of the state, and this person lives completely different place, and see how their stories compare without giving any hints to it. I don't want to give any suggestions as I'm interviewing these people. And their stories kind of patternize themselves to be not almost exact, but there's a lot of characteristics that they have similar. And then there's the thing that nobody talks about is the after effects of an abduction. There are very much after effects after a person has abductions. We know what these are. We know this dehydration. We know there's a craving for certain material to eat. There's a craving for certain chemicals as far as minerals that you want to put in your body that this phenomenon has attached to it. And so when we see these type of things, we go, okay, wait a minute, this fits into the pattern now. And, you have to separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's difficult at sometimes because, as you know, Don and Mark and Gerry, there are people who want to make a story to become famous. They want their 15 minutes of fame. And the UFO field is no different. There's people in there that come up with cockamamie stories that are just not real. I mean, we know that, Don. We've talked about that before. And so in order to try to get a good handle on this, you have to look at the patterns that past people have had and see if they fit the people that are just now reporting the stuff.
Did you encounter any cases that you've investigated that deeply troubled you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's been a couple of abduction cases where I kind of go, oh boy, this is not good. Well, first of all, every single abduction case I think is legitimate is the most terrifying, frightening experience. There's nobody that said to me, oh my God, I had such a wonderful time. And then I've had those people say this. Oh my God, I had such a wonderful time, with the aliens. We taught each other jokes, and, my God, we were having a thing. Oh, come on back. Or the lady that said the aliens came down her backyard and had her try to help fix their flying saucer because it was misfiring or some bullshit like that. So I mean, you kind of go, okay, this isn't working for me, and because I asked the lady, I says, well, are you a physicist? Are you an engineer? No, I'm a housewife. And I went, so what'd you do? Kick the engine, or did you take a screwdriver to it? Or, I mean, what? Oh, no, I went out there and I tinkered with this and there. Lady, please, well, let's stop this right now, okay? Because this isn't going anywhere. So, but you have some people who said, listen, I've never been more terrified in my life. As a matter of fact, and I will tell you, a lot of abductees will now, they've never done it before, but after the abduction, they sleep against a wall. They sleep with the lights on. They have a hard time sleeping. They have PTSD. And you could see some of the things that they say that have them. They have reoccurring dreams that they've never dreamt before. I mean, when a lady says, I've been an abduction, and after my abductions, I keep thinking about nuclear war and Holocaust, and I see cities on fire. And I go, well, is that something you had in the past? No. Why would I ever dream about nuclear war? But this is a recurring dream. A lot of them say, yeah, and this is the really strangest thing, but I've heard this a lot. A lot of abductees know when another time they're going to be abducted. And one of them actually tried to take pictures. And for some reason, they've been stopped taking pictures. And I'm trying to figure that one out. But they actually are, something tells them in their mind to put their camera down. And they can't refuse it.
So how do you distinguish or distance your work from the Betty and Barney Hill, let's say, that was huge in the media at some point, right? It exploded, sure, and they were on the news and all that. There's pollution.
They made a movie about it.
Right. There's pollution of what people can think and their beliefs from the media, movies, magazines, etc. So as this phenomena got more popular and more popular, that pollution level goes up and up, sure, and up and up. So then how does one distance the person, be it if they're under hypnosis or whatever? How does one try to remove that? Because we've all seen that the ETs at one time look like this, and then mostly because of Spielberg and the 90s and stuff, now they look like this, right?
Right.
Probably in the future they're gonna, well, now the net has been thrown open, cast open, and they have the lizard people and the dolphin people and the tall white ones and all that, right? So it's gotten super polluted since the first episodes of this abduction situation. So how does one sort of say, oh, well, this person clearly has been affected by the movies and etc.?
Well, that's a great question, Mark. And some of the things that we do is we kind of look for certain things that are not out in the public. The public, as you says, has polluted this abduction thing. Now they've made movies about it and stuff. But there are certain things that the general public and even the movies do not know that what we look for. And as I said before, we look for cravings of certain minerals, cravings of certain foods. Believe it or not, there is a pattern of that. And, you know, certain things that have physically happened to the body. And, you know, there's certain physical damage that we know happens because it's actually happened to pilots. Very, very interesting thing came out of Gary Nolan. Gary Nolan was given a whole bunch of MRIs of pilots who have had encounters with ships and aliens, and they found white spots on the brain that are very similar to Havana syndrome. And so when these guys have had encounters, they've been given them MRIs, and then they had Gary Nolan take a look at them. Now, the thing is, what does affect these guys, an abductee or an encounteree, you know, affect? Well, there must be some kind of frequency, some kind of energy that our brains can't adapt to. So we kind of look at, but there's also markings that we see that can't be explained how it was done. For instance, Some abductees have had, scoop marks. And you kind of look and you cannot find a scar. There's no scar to it. So, I mean, you take a look at this and you go, wow, geez. And I actually tried to fool a guy one time. I wasn't sure if he was telling the truth. So what I did when I got this, he says, I've got a mark on my hand. I was an abductee, and I've got this very strange mark on my hand now. And I go, okay, send me a picture of it. And he sends me a picture, and it was a very strange, almost like he was branded, maybe like a laser. So I said, okay, that's great. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to talk to this guy for 6 months. I'm going to let it go and just see what happens. Out of the blue, 6 months later, I call him up and say, hey, I'll call him John Doe. Hey, John Doe, do you still have that mark? Yeah. Send me a picture right now. I need it right now. And he says, because we're on the phone, you could take a picture of it and send it to me. Sure enough, he did, and the mark was there. And I brought it to a tattoo artist who said, that's no way a tattoo. And the mark had to change. I actually put the pictures together, measured them and the markings and everything, and nothing had changed on that. So that kind of makes me go, wait a minute. If this guy was trying to fool something, and I haven't talked to him in 6 months, and I said, hey, yeah, thank you a lot. And then try to, because he could have said, oh, the mark is gone, or, no, he's right there. Here's the picture. So there are things that we look for. We can't be 100% right all the time, Mark. You know that this is a phenomenon that, we're still learning about. If anybody tells you he's an abduction expert, they ain't an abduction expert.
I know one. His name's Whitley Strieber. There you go. Abduction expert.
All the abduction people that I know, they have no idea why it's happening to them. They really don't. The ones that get in big conversations with aliens, I tend to be a little more, I won't say skeptical, but I'm a little more suspicious. Because why would these guys, why would you talk to an ant? Would you sit down in an anthill? We're ants to them. We're a lower primitive style creature than what these guys, no matter what people think or say, we're not the big boys on the block anymore. And so when
if there's one thing about this phenomena, if it's true, okay, and this freaks me out more than anything else, it's their apparent ability to turn somebody off, to basically turn them off to the point where they can get the subject, the human, whatever, to do anything they want, to come quietly while we beam you up to the ship, whatever the hell it is. All right. That part bothers me.
Well, look at Calvin Parker, Don. Calvin Parker says he was just touched and he just went limp.
Yeah.
And a lot of abductees say that they can't move. Now, some people say that, well, that's sleep paralysis. You're dreaming that and you become sleep paralysis. Well, maybe some of that, but not all of it, because when people have vivid, memories that break through of going through a wall and seeing their ceiling, going through their ceiling, going into their roof and out and stuff. There's things that they say that make you go, this, they're not joking. They're frightened.
Have you ever talked to any of your, well, what the hell do I call them? Your patients? You're not a doctor.
Your subjects.
No, your subjects.
Let's put that right out there. I'm no way a doctor.
Okay. But have any of them ever laid on you that they suffered the old hag syndrome?
I've heard of the old hag syndrome, but I have not had anybody do that. But they have had reoccurring abductions and generational abductions. They find out that their parents have been abducted, their children have been abducted.
Well, that's
It
the
seems to run.
allegation by Whitley Strieber, is that it's his children, his wife.
Well, I had one in the Pine Bush area that Linda Zimmerman and I talked to. Actually, it was Linda Zimmerman that introduced me to this guy, and his children were being abducted, and the stories were, a lot. And children sometimes, when they tell you a story, they may embellish it a little bit. Not these guys. Everything was really, quite on the up and up. And I've had
How old
that
were
with
they,
children.
Chris? How old?
I think at the time they were, because this was some years ago, I think at the time they were like 8 or 9, somewhere around there. So I mean, they were, old enough to realize what was going on and stuff. But we do know it's generational. We do know that people have had this phenomenon within the family, and there's been, parts of the family that have never had an abduction within the same household. They may take the mother and not the father, and not the children at that time, and then 10 years later the child might have an abduction. And we just have not got a lot of information on that yet, because it's still a new phenomenon.
Well, going back to my initial foray into this UFO thing, I met and then got to know very well Bud Hopkins, who, of course, prior to his passing on, was the foremost abduction researcher anywhere. Okay, he wrote several books on it. I knew some of the subjects of his books. It was something, but there was one part of Bud's research that I thoroughly disagreed with. And okay, I'll be the first to admit that sometimes I can have a very dark outlook on things. But I was aware through my research, through my investigation, that a number of people had some very dark outcomes from alleged exposure to extraterrestrials. One of them was Frederick Valentek. Now, Hopkins, at that time, and I'm talking about the very late 80s, the very early 90s, in all the presentations he gave, he always told the audience that everybody came back. Okay? If they were abducted, everybody came back. The fact of the matter was, no, everybody did not come back. First and foremost, the Frederick Valentek case. Okay? And I asked him about that privately. I mean, we were talking privately. And I said, Bud, I said, you know as well as I know that not everybody comes back. Why do you tell everybody that they do? And he said, I don't want to scare them. Well, I didn't see that as a real good answer or explanation. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Well, I got to agree with you. I don't think everybody does come back, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. One, if you look at some of David Paulides' work, he's done really work on 411, missing 411, where people have never seen these people again, or they've discovered clothes miles away, body gone, and things of that nature. That's number one. Number two, it really is almost a taboo subject, but abductees, they claim they have seen human body parts in some of these ships, and nobody really wants to talk about that, and they're skeevish about it, but they will admit, when I was up there, I saw human body parts, in this thing. And that is something that, you don't see, people just don't want to know about it. And it's the same thing with the whole abduction thing. Look, Don, you know this. Mark, you know this. Gerry. If a person's kidnapped, it's one of the most frightening things in the world because they do not know if they're going to come back. Right in the first thought of their mind, if your person's kidnapped, and I've worked on kidnapping cases before of actual people being kidnapped, not abducted, but kidnapped. But look at what we say about abduction. We give it a nice word. You're abducted. We don't say you're kidnapped and assaulted and things are being taken out of your body, which is absolutely true. But we don't give it that because why? We there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, if a child is kidnapped, what do? We call the FBI. We call the local police. We go on manhunts. We find it.
Norris.
We use all kinds. What's that, Mark?
Chuck Norris. Come on.
Yeah, we call Chuck Norris.
That's right.
He's better than I am at it. And so that's it for the abduction phenomenon. You can't call the FBI. You can't call the police. You really got nobody to call.
So I want to throw this out there based on what Don said. So we have the Travis Walton case, and while nobody saw him taken, they saw that light come down and maybe he was pulled off the ground, but they split, right? So nobody, as far as I know, in that case said that they saw him levitated into the ship and the ship took off. But let's use that as one example. What examples do we have of people who are abducted that other people saw that then they never came back?
Well, I have to tell you that the ones that never came back are the ones that are probably reported to police and they don't know if they were actually abducted. But there are people who have turned around and David Place puts this in the book, and I have to refer to David Place because that's the most common thing. He's done really great research on this.
Yes.
So there's people who said, my child was right over here. I was watching her. I turned my head for a second for some unknown reason. You're talking about matter of seconds, and the child was gone.
Yep.
And we have other people who are said the same thing. We passed. I was walking down. Here's one. I was walking down a path with this person. The person went just behind this tree. Gone. Just gone.
Right.
And so, I mean, if you report to the police, what are they going to do? The first thing they're going to think is foul play, which I don't blame them. That's the first thing I would do.
But you see the point that I'm making. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that if we're going to hook up the UFO thing with it, there should be some UFO stuff with it.
Well,
right?
Now, Polides, I knew Polides. I've interviewed him. Okay. And when I interviewed him, and this was over 10 years ago. All right.
Who's name dropping, Don?
This is something that I was very interested in. And he didn't say it, but his indications when I talked to him, all right, was that somehow Bigfoot or Sasquatch was involved. Now, anybody that's read his books, I've read his books, I've talked to him, etc. And the bottom line is, now I don't know, it's been years since I spoke to Polides, but then his working hypothesis, and he was very circumspect about it, involved Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Okay, so for whatever that's worth. Now, he didn't so much get into the idea of ET and aliens then, but Bigfoot, Bigfoot he did. Now, the thing I can't understand, there were people, and one of the places where if you're going to disappear, and this is something that was not well known, one of the worst places you can go to is federal forested lands. Okay. National parks. And more people disappear in national parks. And basically, the rangers, the federal forestry personnel that work on you play hell in a handbasket to get any statistics from them.
Oh yeah.
They actively discourage anybody trying to get statistics from them. Now that tells me a hell of a lot. I don't know about you guys, but there was a cover-up going on concerning that.
Well, one of the reasons for the cover-up, Don, and Mark, you probably know this, that there's been law enforcement people going in there knowing that on national forests, there's all kinds of crops that are illegal being grown.
Right.
Hence marijuana, opiate, poppy. And they have very sophisticated systems of protecting that. And also people with AK-47s. If you actually seen some of the police officers, or I should say the federal agents, they go in, pretty heavy because they know they're going to find people in there with machine guns. And I think a lot of people wander off and find themselves in the middle of a marijuana field and at the point of an AK-47 or other kind of rifle, and they just disappear.
Yeah, they're disappeared by someone.
And that's what they're looking for in many cases, too. I used to live up by the Green Triangle, and lots of guys where I lived would say, hey, we're going to go up there, and we're going to go see if we can find something. And now the people I knew came back with, let's just say, trunk fulls of fun times. But they would go up there, and they would camp out, and they would scope it all out, and then they'd go in there, and they'd get a bunch of the stuff and bring it home. So,
yeah, that's one of the most, believe it or not, it's one of the most dangerous jobs is to go after these crop fields in national forests. I mean, these guys have to go wear, all kinds of body armor and have sophisticated equipment because they're dealing with people who are, pretty much sophisticated themselves. And we probably do miss people. Now, why would they keep that secret? Well, how safe would you think you'd be in a national forest if they knew that people were getting gunned down and in that type of environment?
Right. It's when you go back to the Bigfoot thing as well. Part of that whole deal about Bigfoot and aliens and the proof of Bigfoot is that you don't ever find the Bigfoot bones and stuff, right? Well, right. What a lot of these people, because they're not hunters and stuff, don't understand is, okay, why don't you go out and find a grizzly carcass? Well, you're going to have just as much possibility of that generally, unless you luck out, or a deer carcass or anything, right? Because that's the way it works out there, man.
I mean, you're apt to, but the one thing that they always leave out is if this is a higher intelligent creature, they're probably going to be like elephants and have burial grounds.
Well, then after 100 years, you would probably find some of those burial grounds.
Soil gets deeper. It doesn't get shallower. Soil keeps growing.
Yes.
And Mark, you're absolutely right on that. But here's the thing that we can't explain. How does a 5-6-year-old who's disappears right in front of the family, they say, okay, go out in the backyard, Tommy, and play. And they look and Tommy's there playing. And next thing you know, Tommy's gone. Yeah. And there's a big field around him. So, I mean, you could see for a good quarter to a half mile because there's no woods.
Well, are you referring to that one case with the little girl?
No, I'm referring to a lot of cases are similar to this where they find Tommy's belongings that he had, his clothes, 8-9 miles away from there on a steep hill that no 5-year-old, 6-year-old
is going to be able to do.
Right. The terrain,
and then they would go back and they would find like the shoes where they had already looked,
right,
and had already cleared the area. Yeah, I know the story you're talking about.
How do you explain a young kid?
There is no explanation. Either somebody's
I don't know if there's no explanation exactly. That as investigators on top of us here, you would both look at, well, what sort of evidence were there at the clothes? Are there combat boot marks and things from dirtbags out there who wanted to use the kid for nefarious projects or something, right? So I don't know what those stories are, but Yeah, it's like I don't have access to what they did to try to answer this, right? I have no clue, but
and that's the perfect saying, Mark, is that because of all ufology, the way it is, we can't say definite on any subject. There is not one subject we can absolutely say positively 100% this is correct.
well, when we
know.
come back from break, I got something I want to bring up to you. I talked to Don about it, about the Lazar story, and you're a good guy to ask.
Oh boy.
Okay. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dark Matters Radio. Our special guest tonight, Mr. Chris Deperno. Chris is the host of the KGRA show, I Detective, and of course, the MUFON state director for the state of New York. We'll be back after these words. Stick around. And we are back. You know, I wish KGRA would license some Doors music. You know, Strange Days would be a great theme song for this, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a thought, Well, we are back. So, gentlemen, let's pick up where we left off.
I did want to mention something from earlier that, because I wrote it into our private chat, that it was, because I'm sitting there trying to remember the name of it, is the drawing that Betty Hill drew was later identified as Zeta Reticuli.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's like the odds of being able to do that the way she did is not just improbable, it's technically impossible.
Well, and the Zeta Reticuli star system, you cannot even view it from here in North America. Okay, you've got to go down to Central and South America to be able to see it. So yeah, that was very strange. And the Marjorie Fish map, boy, there were a lot of skeptics that tried to shoot that full of holes and weren't able to. Yeah. But anyway, you were talking about Lazar.
So I'll open with this and then I'll do Lazar. So this Greer character constantly says that he's invited into skiffs to get super secret information. He's constantly saying that he's going out to black sites and being shown stuff. A nobody. This guy's a nobody.
Because he knows that nobody can confirm nor deny it.
Right. So he constantly says this stuff. So the Lazar case is very interesting. I can't poo-poo it because I only know what the normal sort of armchair researcher knows. But what really bothers me about this case is that you have Knapp involved, a journalist, right, who brought this guy out, and supposedly this guy has some education from, was it Caltech and MIT? Okay, supposedly. And yet it's been covered up. They pulled out all the information, blah, blah, blah. And I talked to Don about this. And as a detective investigator, he kind of agrees with me. It's like, look, if you're going to do the real research, you're going to take this prick over to those sites. And you're going to walk around with him and you're going to ask him, where did you go? What did you do? What buildings were you in, etc., and build a sort of real world case about, was he actually at these two sites or not? And even though it was a long time ago, you could probably pull forth some names of instructors, some names of people he went there. They saw a concert in the quad of a Doors tribute band, whatever. Nobody's ever done this. Nobody's ever done that. And it's like, well, gee, Knapp, why didn't you do this? Either he did do it and didn't like the response, or there's some, and I'm not an investigator like that. I'm not a detective. Why wouldn't somebody jump on that immediately so he could at least prove, yeah, I parked in A2 parking spot. I went over to this building. I ate lunch here. Up there on the second floor is this and that and the other thing. Nobody's ever done that. They just say, oh, well, his stuff got pulled by the men in black and there's no way to prove it. Well, that's horse shit.
Did you want me to respond to that, Mark?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, first, let's talk about his story of MIT and Caltech. So I don't know if he went to those places or not. I can't tell you that, but I can tell you how some things are done, and I can tell you on a police type of thing. So let's say I'm asked to go deep undercover. I work for a law enforcement agency, and says, Chris, you're going to go deep undercover. Deep. You're going to infiltrate the Hell's Angels gang, or you're going to, get into somewheres where your cover has to be absolutely completed. Now you got to remember, some of these gangs or some of these cartels are very sophisticated now. These guys aren't like the television portrays them, where they're dummies running around with just pistols and stuff. The cartels the upper management of cartels are very much educated, very much know what and how to do. They hire, people of tier 1 operator status, from military intelligence people and everything else. And so these guys aren't stupid. They're going to look into a guy's background, and they're going to try to see if they can find out if this guy is a federal agent or not, and stuff. And they have to be very careful. You have to get a whole new identity. You have to make sure that undercover is protected. So would they pull files? Yeah, they would. If there's any kind of something that would make that guy stand out to them, they're going to try to cover it where they can keep him protected, because ultimately that's what you want to do. You want to keep the undercovers as protected as possible. Now, I'm not saying that happened with Lazar, but it can be done, Mark. You can pull stuff, especially in the age now of modern technology. I mean, let's face it. If the government wants to hack into something and withdraw files and stuff, they can do it.
You're right, but this is different. This has nothing to do with his credentials. Nothing.
Right. I mean, I'm just giving you an idea what can be done.
Sure. I agree with that.
Right. Now, I'm not saying it was done, but what I'm saying to you.
All right. But it doesn't matter if it was done or not.
Right.
See?
But
that's
here's
my point.
Right. Here's the other thing about Lazar. There are people he actually brought out to the site and said, "Hey, watch this, because we're gonna see this craft and stuff," and which it happened. Now, the other thing, and you brought up a great point about this, they actually did sit Lazar down and say, and they didn't ask him a question about UFOs. They said, "Where do you go eat food? Where do you go take lunch? What color are the chairs? What color are the?" Because they took a person who was actually at Area 51, and they asked him those questions in order to do that. And so they actually did ask him, are the tables square or round? Are the tables this color? Are they made of this? How do you get your lunch? Where are the bathrooms off the lunchroom? Where's your human resource office there? Where is, how do you get to a bus or plane? Where do you have this?
Yeah, because that was one of them too, Chris, wasn't it? That he was able to talk about the flight coming in and the shuttles that he took.
Right.
And that was proven to be factual too.
Right. And remember, he also talked about a piece. I thought it was garbage when he said this. But remember, he said there's a certain type of fingerprint thing that you put your hand on, and it actually measures the bones it's almost like an x-ray, but it takes a look at your bones what's inside and can identify those bones, as being you. And nobody's ever heard of that. And that's where people thought, this guy's a liar. But then years later, it's actually true. So that gives a lot of credibility to his story.
Well, it does. But why didn't they do this about his education then? They asked him about a super secret place in the desert that somebody supposedly works at to confirm it. Okay. Now, that's not a lot of confirmation, but then nobody asked him about an MIT with 5,000 people there every day and 300 teachers.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, because I think some of his parts of his story are embellished. But let's take a look at the guy. Figure out his education, because we know the government has taken people who haven't had educations and built mock stories around
his claims. He made those claims,
right, and stuff. But how do you build a rocket car without having some kind of intelligence? I mean, you just can't. And we know for a fact that he built a rocket car. It was in the
No,
news.
I got a friend who did that same stuff, and he never went to college either. Super bright guy, knew calculus, taught himself calculus.
And that's my
right.
And that's my thought. Now, did he lie about his education? Possibly. But was he in the phone book? What was it? Los Alamos phone book? Now, you just can't go to Los Alamos unless you. The only way he's going to go to Los Alamos is by and have a thorough background and being able to know what he's doing there. Unless you get hired as a janitor, in which those guys got to have clearance.
They still also have to have clearance.
Well, you see the problem with the case, though. The case has been cherry picked to give people the answers that they want.
Right. The other thing that he had, and James Goodall looked at this. I talked to James Goodall. James actually had one of his pay stubs. And James Goodall definitely came from naval intelligence. But James Goodall took it to some admiral. He, as James Goodall was a historian for I think the Air Force. Was it a Navy or Air Force? Anyways, a military historian. He had a top secret clearance. He goes into an admiral or general. I think it was an admiral. He says, hey, I'm doing some research on this guy here. And he gives him the pay stub. And the general admiral goes berserk on him. And this is a friend. And he just starts screaming and hollering, get the F out of my office. Don't ever come back in here talking about this guy or anything else again. Shreds the photocopy of the pay stub. And, James is bewildered as to why he's getting all this stuff. Maybe nothing, but sure gives a little smoke to this thing.
Okay, I can put some light on this. I've been to Lazar's house when he was in Vegas twice. All right, went down there with Rich Saraday. We interviewed him in his office, saw his jet car, took a photo of it, got a photo of it. It was parked in his garage there. Went wandering through his house. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and blow smoke up your ass and tell you that I was convinced by everything. His lab in the house struck me almost, and I don't know if it was or not, but almost like a prop set. Okay, if you were shooting a movie of a scientist. But I talked to the guy. I sat right there. I stared into his eyes. And I had been following this since Knapp's second special, where Lazar was finally named. The first special he did was he was just identified as Dennis, a pseudonym. Okay. Well, as it turns out, Dennis was the name of a guy that basically Lazar worked under out at the site. Now, I could tell he was still freaked out by the security procedures that they apparently used out there, including grabbing him, shoving him up against a wall, sticking a gun into his face, threatening to shoot him. Did you talk to anybody? Did you do this? Did you do that? Actually, Lazar's marriage at that time broke up because his wife at that point was having an affair that the security people told Lazar about. That was certainly a security problem right there. How did they know? Because they had him under 24/7 surveillance. His phones, everything were wiretapped. Whatever the hell was going on there was scary. His car, he had a beautiful Corvette then that he tooled all over Vegas in. somebody at one point after the special that Knapp ran on KLAS TV shot one of his tires out as he was driving down a boulevard. Okay. They were playing mind fuck games with Lazar. They were trying to basically freak him out to the point where he'd shut up or do something stupid. Well, what happened then? Lazar, and I went down to Vegas with another guy right away after this story broke. Lazar had set up a security system for a bordello down there. That's a nice way of saying a whorehouse. Okay. The madam that was running the bordello, Lazar was having an intimate relationship with. He set up security cameras. He set up computers for her. How did the general public find out? Well, in Las Vegas, they play hardball. Okay. And they really do. They play hardball. Another TV station down there was freaked out at the ratings that Channel 8 was getting as a result of Knapp's specials. They hired some private detectives to follow Knapp, to follow Lazar from the time he got up until he went to bed. Okay. Everywhere he went, including this bordello, this whorehouse. All right. Then somebody tipped Knapp off that this rival TV station was going to run a series of exposés on Bob Lazar, Channel 8, George Knapp, etc. And Knapp, because he was tipped off, grabbed Lazar and convinced Lazar the best thing to do would be, come on, have Knapp interview him, okay, and basically predispose the sensational story this other TV station was going to do. Unfortunately for Bob Lazar, that was an election year, and the DA was running to get reinstalled as the DA. He needed a big public win. So what did this son of a bitch do? They ended up charging Lazar for running a house of ill repute, which he had nothing to do with that. Okay? Nothing to do with it. He was banging the madam, and as a favor, he set up these computers and security cameras. That was it. But they were going to put Lazar in the slam for like three to 5 years, okay, if they would have got a conviction. So, hey, look, I'm telling you, I was up to that damn story.
Did they get mud on their face over that, I hope?
He ended up copping a plea. Okay.
One could make the case that he did have something to do with running that place. One could make that case because he helped set up the infrastructure of that place.
Yeah.
So
well, maybe.
So his hands were dirty. It just may have been, look, I'm having sex with this broad and I'm going to help her out. But one could easily make the case, you knew what you were doing. You knew what she was doing. My only point is that with somebody like Knapp, as good as some of the work that he did, nobody decided to at least put a pin in the education aspect of it, or try to put a pin in that. And I just find it interesting that that case has, this is all hindsight, of course.
Well, look, I understand. You and I have beat this dog many times, but this is my personal, my private read.
Oh, I get it.
No, Lazar is one of those guys that said, look, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is my story. Same story I've been telling for 35 years. Personally, I don't give a shit whether you believe it or not.
I think he does. I think he does, or he would just stop telling it.
Nah. He could care less. Look, I'm talking about. I met this guy in the very beginning. Now I can say this on a personal level. I would have to say I doubt he and I would have gone out and had a beer together. Okay, there was something about Lazar that I was coolish toward, and with me, with my background, he probably felt the same way. Which, hey, I get that.
Yeah.
Ask Chris. When people find out you're a cop or we're a cop, they get a little hanky, don't they, Chris?
Oh, yeah. What'd you do for a living? I was a retired homicide detective. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, hey, I got a phone call. See you later.
So it is interesting that I know that he brought people out there to look at interesting lights in the sky. That's a proven fact. You know who else did that? And I'm not discounting what he did.
No, it makes a good show, Mark. It's great that you asked these
so
questions.
did Sean David Morton.
Mm-hmm.
He brought people out there to show lights in the sky. Now, granted, those were probably the jets going in and out. But regardless, he did the same thing. Other people have done the same thing.
But
right?
the thing about Lazar, all right. Now you gotta know the other players that were involved in all of that malarkey. John Lear,
yeah,
Gene Huff, who at that time was probably, I would have to class him as Lazar's best buddy. He knew that Wednesday nights is when they tested these things.
right.
Okay. Whatever these things were. And the reason they did it above the mountains, the Groom Mountains, was because Wednesday had been determined to be the least likely night. They would have a lot of traffic going out there. Okay. It was just said to be, hey, this is when we're going to do it. Well, Lazar knew that. And he took them out there. They videotaped it.
Yes, I saw them.
This thing, boom, took off, and it was making all these crazy maneuvers around the sky. Lear was blown away. Then what happened? Security got put onto them. They chased them down the road. That's when the next time, Lazar went out to the site. All right. They grabbed him and they shoved guns in his face. All right. He broke the Holy of Holies. All right. There was probably nothing more ultra top secret, if in fact these things are recovered UFOs, UAPs, in the world, not even the hydrogen bomb. Okay. This was more covert, more top secret, more deep black than even the H-bomb. And Lazar blew the whistle. Now, I got to tell you, I was involved in intelligence shit in Vietnam when we were at war with the North Vietnamese communists. I personally observed some sketchy shit. I'm shocked that Bob Lazar is still above ground and breathing, if in fact that's what he did. Now, why do I say that? Do you guys know the name Carl Wolf?
Yes.
Okay. Wolf was a friend of mine. As a matter of fact, we did some TV stuff together out here in LA about the time, well, it's a long story. I'm not going to go into it. But Carl Wolf had been an Air Force electronics technician with a top security clearance, all right, back 65, 66, when the first moon probes were being sent up under the auspices of the Apollo program to photograph the moon and find possible landing sites when our astronauts went up there. On the rear of the moon, the side we never see, okay, the back side of the moon, they photographed some amazing buildings and structures, according to Carl. Now, how did he find out about this? At the time of these missions, okay, the technology was such that the probe, the ship, would be circling the moon in various degrees of the orbit, and they would photograph a strip, okay, as they're going around. As they photographed the script, it was radioed back to Earth to a facility in Langley, Virginia, where the CIA is based, but it wasn't at CIA. It was a NASA facility, and they would print these strips out, and they would end up making a giant photograph by layering these strips together. Well, one or two of their printers broke down. So Carl's CO gets a call. They need a technician over there. He's got to be checked through, all right, into this facility. He's got a security badge. He's got all that kind of stuff. He's got to show them. He gets over there. He said, this is what he told me, and I interviewed him too. I've got the interview. That when he got in there, he noticed that here were all these scientists that he saw that were from apparently all over the world, friendly toward America, of course. And I said, well, how do you know that they were from somewhere other than the USA? Well, they were talking in their own languages, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, well, what happened next? He said, well, a security guy guided me back to where they had the printers. So they opened up the door. He had all his trash. He went in. He's in this room now. He said there was one lone airman in there, probably an E3, E4, just keeping his eye on everything around there. And Carl told him who he was, and he said, which printer, blah, blah. And the guy showed him. He went over, and they had like modules in there. One of the modules went Tango uniform, okay? So they had to replace it. So Carl made the call, I need such and such module, okay, and this thing should start working again. So they had to get one over to him. And then he was just in there with this kid, all right, this airman, who was keeping an eye on everything. And they weren't doing much. They might have chatted just a little tiny bit. Now, knowing Carl, and especially at that time, he would have been a very probably shy and diffident guy, because that's how he was when I knew him. And I knew him in the 90s. And he said as he's sitting there, this kid turns to him and said, you know, we found a base on the moon. And Carl looked at him. He said, I was shocked. He said, a base? Whose? The Russians? And the kid says, no. And he pulled out a couple of pictures and showed him. And I said, well, hell, what'd you see? He said, well, I saw a lot of buildings. I saw some things that looked like radar dishes or dishes, radar dishes of some kind. I saw some buildings that had lit windows. And I said, oh my God, what'd you do? He said, I got terrified. He said, I knew all this stuff was top secret. He said, the last thing in the world. He said, my God, if somebody would have walked in there, they would have busted both of us. So I said, oh, okay, you're probably right. I said, well, then what happened? He said, well, they got the module over there. I got it fixed. I set it up and it started working again. I was done and I left. But he said, I got to tell you, all that week, I kept my eye on the news. I was positive certain that they were going to announce this. And of course, they never did. Now, the first time publicly, now we interviewed him in UFO Magazine, and I interviewed him on my show, Dark Matters Radio. But the first time he ever publicly really talked about this was that thing that Stephen Greer put on in, what was it, 2001 or 2002 at the press club. So, hey, okay, all well and good, but then what? Well, one day, Carl is out riding his bicycle. Somebody ran him over, hit and run, never found out who, and he's dead. Now, coincidence or not? I don't know. But Carl is dead. Bob Lazar is still alive. But Carl Wolf is gone. So
back to that Lazar thing. If he went back out there, evidently with Huff and Lear again, because you said, well, he went back out there and he got grabbed and a gun was put.
Well, no. It's when he was supposed to report for work. They didn't go back out there spying on the thing. It's when he was supposed to go to work. You see, they would call him up. He didn't go there every day. They would tell him, you're going to be here on this day, and then the next time you're going to be here is on that day.
Right. So when he was supposed to go to work and they went and they basically accosted him, did you ever hear any stories about, I hate to even say his name, Lear, because I think he's a freaking moron, but Lear or Huff being accosted in a similar way because they were brought up there and shown stuff they shouldn't have been shown?
No.
I got a story that I was accosted and I had a top secret clearance and stuff. They will come after you if they thought you did something wrong.
Sure.
I walked into a room I wasn't supposed to walk into. And I found it open and it wasn't supposed to be open. And, I worked at American embassies. I was part of the Marine Security Guard force there. And one of the duties that we had to do besides doing protection work is we had to do security of the building. And so we had to make nightly rounds to make sure doors were locked and everything else, just like anything else. Well, this door wasn't locked. And I walked in and I saw stuff that, hey, I better get out of here. But of course, I had to write it up. Well, I wrote it up, and then the chief of station the next day came down. And I'll tell you what, I would rather face a whole bunch of terrorists than face him, because I had the idea I was going to be put in a desert somewhere and my name wiped off the face of the earth. These guys, some of these guys don't play good. They don't play fair, and they don't play good.
That's one of my problems with the research protocol of unidentifieds in this whole thing. Is one of my problems is that, isn't it interesting that that similar issues that follow Lazar follow Skinwalker Ranch in the first book that was written about that with the same guy, right? So when I look at something, and I won't say his name, but when I look at something like the Billy Meyer case that is still believed by many, many people as
I don't give that much credit.
I'm just saying that it's still believed either partially or fully by thousands of people. Only one researcher ever went to that site and infiltrated and asked questions and took photos and stuff. That's the problem with the whole subject, is that with the case like that, instead of blowing it out of the water correctly, only one lunatic goes there and writes a book about it. That's a huge problem.
Here's the one thing, Mark. Let's face it. Lazar's whole history and stories are very suspicious. There's no question about that. But there's things that, I mean, you got to look at what's happened in the course of years, not when George Knapp was interviewing. What's happened after? Remember, he talked about years and years ago about how the amplifiers worked, how they tilt, they'll rotate the ship like it's on its side, and that's how they move. And you'll see like an aura around the ship, and that's actually moving space in front of it rather than pushing it from behind. And all this stuff that he's saying, people thought was nonsense. Well, what happened when we got the film from these pilots, that they leaked out? Well, sure enough, the ship tilted on its side. It was going in that direction that Lazar explained 20 years ago. So you kind of say to yourself, holy crap, the guy's had to know something.
Right. But still, with the whole thing, it's like, that's the problem with the subject, though. It's like, well, look, this is very interesting stuff here, but the foundation of the case, there's issues there. Well, don't worry about those. Don't worry about those.
No, we're
going to let those sit for decades and decades and decades, and we're going to look over here because this is more interesting and fascinating.
Well, remember, my old sergeant used to teach me, Chris, whatever they show you in the right hand, start looking at the left, because that's where the real information is. Right. And so that's why I say to you, Mark, it is a suspicious case, but there's things in there that you have to say to yourself, how did he know this? I mean, how did he know? And now you got video proof of what he was saying. Look, this guy is no dummy. I mean, he might be a loony bird for all I know. Never met him, but he runs a company called United Nuclear. And he works with stuff like aerogel, which is one of the lightest metals made by NASA. I mean, I'm looking at his website right now. How would he get a license if he was like a pork chop? How would he get a license to get radioactive material and all this other stuff? You know what I mean? I would think that the U.S. government would come in and say, "Hey, we're closing you down. You're nuttier than a fruitcake. You're a liar, and you're not going to."
Right. And you're making my case for me. If you wanted to prove the case, then go into the foundational aspects of the case and prove it. It's for his benefit.
I'm going to tell you something else, Mark, that hurts the Lazar case is the involvement of Jeremy Corbell and Lou Elizondo.
Yeah, but there are people that came later, and they're going to base all their stuff on what
they do. The documentary, which I think hurts Lazar. Any of these people who, have an air of legitimacy to them are damaged by these guys, because these guys are commercial cult level guys, and they're doing damage to them.
Yeah. Well,
everybody talked about isn't there an element now called element 15? It's supposed to be an unstable.
Well, they've argued that it doesn't work the way that Lazar described.
Right. It's 115. They made a little bit of it. I'm no expert at this, but they said there's no way that this. Now, granted, he may have called it 115, Lazar, right? But he's not in charge of any of this. So when they do create 115 in the lab, well, that's their 115. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. One thing we gotta would absolutely make Lazar's case is we got to prove there's an S4. Nobody's really proven to me that there's an S4. I'm not saying Lazar didn't work there, but I'd like to see more evidence about an S4.
Sure.
I mean, we know that Area 51 is real, but how many people have actually come out and said, "Hey, I worked at S4 too"?
Well, you see, that's part of the shtick. Now, although we haven't had any close contact in the last several years, back in the day, in the 90s, I had a lot of contact with Knapp. All right. And every time, because that was a case, the Lazar thing always fascinated me. And that was a case of, I dug as much as I could dig, all right, as time went on. And I asked him questions. Now, one of the things I asked him, Now, you got to remember that before Lazar, all right, nobody even knew Area 51 existed. It was a site picked back in the early to mid 50s by the CIA where they could work with experimental aircraft and what have you. The U-2, ultimately, what the hell did they call it? The A-12, later the SR-71. And
Oxcart.
So Oxcart, yeah, that's right. So I asked Knapp about that, and I said, well, did you know that there was a secret place? He said, yeah. He said, I've worked on other stories that had nothing to do with UFOs, aliens, or anything else, but guys who were working out there. Now, you got to remember, there was a lot of Cold War stuff going on. The commies, the Soviets, were all over that place like fleas on a hound dog. Why? Well, for one thing, because of Area 51. They knew, the Russians knew, had an idea what the hell was going on out there. Knapp had worked on a number of very sketchy stories with people that had previously worked out there. And I asked him, did you ever hear of this place? He said, oh, yeah. He said, long before Lazar. So, if you're to believe George Knapp, he knew about this before Lazar. And then I said, well, how did you vet Lazar and know that he wasn't a bullshit artist, George? And he told me, and Chris, you relayed it pretty good. Where was the mess hall, the lunchroom? Where were the bathrooms? What color were the walls? What kind of tables did they have in there? All right, et cetera, et cetera. And he said Lazar passed that with flying colors because Knapp had used those same questions with some of these other people that he had investigated years before. There you go.
And that's my exact point of as good a work as Knapp did. He did shitty work when he wouldn't do the same thing with his education to put it to rest.
You're right.
Put it to rest.
Yeah, Mark, you're absolutely right on that. And that makes the whole story suspicious. I'm not disagreeing with that. But let me ask you this, and this is a hypothetical situation, and I don't know if this is right or not. Could they have made a cover story for Lazar? Could they have said, all right, because you're working on something that's extremely sensitive, we're going to make a cover story for you. We're going to say that you went to MIT. We're going to say that you graduated from Berkeley. Maybe he went to a college somewhere else. That's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm not saying that happened, but if the government wanted to make a cover story for somebody, that would be a perfect thing. So
you're absolutely right, and that's the answer to that's the other side of the answer.
Well, I'll give you guys something that you probably don't know. And at the time, I got to tell you, I was rather surprised by it. He was working, Lazar, allegedly, was working in something so covert and so sophisticated. Guess what the people allegedly did out at the site? What? They issued him an Uzi 9mm submachine gun to take with him.
They issued it to him?
Yes. A 9mm. Now, Mark, let's say you get a wild hair up your ass. You want to get a 9mm Uzi submachine gun.
I'm going to have to move out of America.
Yeah. He was tooling around, and especially after his Corvette got the tires shot out. Yes. So,
well, anyway, see, that makes my case, though, Chris, is that either they looked into it and they were getting these strange answers or no answers because it was a cover story, or they decided that they possibly needed that sort of gray matter to revolve around this story, much like the Skinwalker Ranch and read my book, there's evidence in here. There's no effing evidence in that stupid book. There's none. There's claims and stories. That's not evidence.
Right. And we know publishers, writers, movie people embellish on a lot of stuff. And, you know,
but you want to be taken. I know you said, Don, that he doesn't care if the people believe him or not, or he doesn't care. I call bullshit on that. He wouldn't be going on to Rogan, and he wouldn't be part of these documentaries and stuff if he was so removed from the story that he doesn't care. He wouldn't be saying it 40 years later if he didn't care. There is some caring there.
And let me give you a metaphor, okay? And I'm only going to mention this because it's fastly approaching me right now. And it's something that I'll carry with me to the grave, all right? March the 30th, every freaking year, starting around the 30th of March, I go into a funk, all right? Why? Because that was the date that my team in Vietnam up on the demilitarized zone got overrun. And April the 2nd, a couple of days after that, all right, was Easter Sunday then. That was 1972. That's the day I got shot up and wounded. Now, every year, and hey, look, it's been over 50 freaking years now, all right? 50 years, over 50 years, and I still haven't been able to shake that. Now, you've known me a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've known me a long time. Am I lying about that?
Well, no, but you're also not going on TV and on to documentaries talking about it.
No, I'm not. But, okay, the thing with Lazar, I think he is experiencing, hey, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist.
But you play one on TV.
No, I haven't. I tried to get the gig, but I didn't get the gig. I think he has a type of PTSD about this. I really do. And
he might. So prove it. Prove it on his own. Oh, well, no, I'm embracing my PTSD. I don't want to prove it. F you.
I do find it odd that he has never stepped forward to prove his education.
Yeah.
It's just odd.
Yeah, it is suspicious. I would be very suspicious of it. The first thing I would think is, all right, you know, where did he work? Because if you have that type of education, you're not going to be pushing a broom somewhere. At least, 90%.
Unless he's Matt Damon.
Yeah, it could be Matt Damon.
Right.
Do you like apples?
What was the name? What was the name of that movie?
Good Will Hunting.
Hunting.
I love the line. He goes, "Hey, you like apples?" And the guy goes, "Yeah." He holds up his report card. "How you like them apples?" I love that line. It's a great fucking movie.
You know, but this is the whole thing about ufology, Mark. It's not just Lazar. There's a whole other people that are either trying to get their 15 minutes of fame, trying to sell a book, trying to do something. Now, I'm not saying all of them are right there. There's a lot of good ufologists out there that really are dedicated to this. But Don and I, and you know that without naming names, there's people out there that said they've gone to battle with blue chickens or helped blue chickens. And, yeah, okay. And it's like, all right, enough. And then they got nothing to prove it. I mean, you got these super soldiers that don't know the nomenclature of their weapon. I mean, how much super can you get a soldier that doesn't even know their own weapon that they're carrying?
It's a shit show. We have the green egg, and then it's shown by the guy from MUFON. I forget which MUFON that was, Don. The guy who came out, who flew the helicopters and all that, and he looks at it and he dissects it and goes, "This is total bullshit. It's total bullshit."
Yeah, that was David Toom, I think it was. He's a great guy. He's a very, very straightforward, good guy, and he knows what he's talking about. He's flew helicopters for the U.S. Army for years.
Right. It's so frustrating, man, that these things stick around. And with now, of course, you can say, well, Mark, then why don't you go out and go do it? And well, I'm not in the position to go talk to this guy, Lazar, and say, I'm flying you over to MIT. We're going to spend the weekend there, and I'm going to freaking just get up your asshole about this. Well, he's not going to do that with me. Of course not. Knapp was the only one who had this opportunity. It was Knapp. He should have done this, Mr. Journalist.
Yeah. A book should be written about this, and the title of the book should be called What I Didn't Know and When I Didn't Know It.
You've been elected, Kissel.
I've been elected to write that book. That's basically my life. So
let's look at what Lazar is doing now. And this is where I got to say he's got to have some education behind him, because he runs this company that's doing, very sophisticated material. I'm looking at his website, and half the stuff that he's put in there, I've never even heard of before. I've never heard of aerogel.
Now,
I didn't know it's the lightest material in the world. Mercury metal.
Look, he's run a business like that for many years, and he's also been raided by the feds. Now, back in the day, all right, and like I said, at the time, I was up to my eyebrows in that story. I was down in Vegas frequently, et cetera, and at the time, I was actually closer to Lazar's buddy Huff than I was Lazar. And those two guys, for the most part, were inseparable. I got some funny stories about some of the shenanigans these two did. But anyway, somewhere along the line, it came out that Lazar had smuggled a disc of element 115 out of there. And then it was hidden. Now, I got this from Huff. Later, I got it from John Lear. And I never got it from Lazar himself. But that was at that point, that was the Holy Grail. Mm-hmm. The Holy Grail was they had one of these discs of element 115. Now, kind of, if we were to talk about this like it was Star Trek, okay, that would have been the dilithium crystals that the Enterprise needed to run. This element 115 was what made the generator and all that horse shit run, okay? The antimatter, gravity, and all that kind of stuff allegedly flowed from element 115. Now, his place was raided. Now, I haven't heard anything. Well, as a matter of fact, Gene Huff, I haven't talked to him since 2004. But getting back to this, now, whether they really did, whether they had something that they stashed, it's hard to say. But like I said earlier, Lazar is still above ground and running around. Now, if somebody really had a sore butthurt about him, I don't think he would be.
Yeah, so, that's true. But let's look at all these new people who have come out, right? Grush and this new guy with the egg and all that. Now, granted, they're new people, but when's the last time a whistleblower left us? I have no answer there, but when's the last time that happened, that somebody of good mind and body and not in their 90s who came forward as a blower are gone? I would say maybe that rich guy who got shot in the back of the head a few times. Was that his name, Rich? It had something to do with the Clintons, and he was in
Whitewater. Yeah.
Now, that was quite some time ago, and that looks like that was what you're talking about, Don. So it might be better for them to have him out there on the Rogan show and all that, right?
It's been about, 2 years since the first whistleblower, right? It's over a year since Grush, right?
Oh yeah, yes,
for Senate,
yeah,
and
it's been
nothing.
about 14 months.
Still nothing.
Well,
Right.
boys, here's the sad part of the story. We got 1 minute, less than 1 minute before the end of the show. Chris, what do you got coming up on iDetective on Wednesday?
George Hill, we're going to be talking about the Chinese influence in South America, and are we ready for war with them? Because they're ready for war with us.
Oh, they are.
That's scary. Okay.
It is scary.
Mark, you got anything going on, buddy?
I'll do it early.
You're living the bachelor life right now.
I am. The wife's gone for another week, and the side of the yard's being fixed up with concrete and all that, and I'm eating bad food, and I'll say it early. God bless Sam and Dean Winchester, so I don't get caught up.
Gary, you got anything, buddy?
And we got a lot of shows coming up. Still celebrating Gene Hackman's life, his career. But right now, I just want to say, hey, for my love for Harry Carey, Cubs win. Cubs win.
That's it, gang. That's it for this week. We'll be back again in a week. In the meantime, have a great week. And don't forget, Thursday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern, UAP Crossfire. Good night, gang.